welcome to another edition of Fora. Really excited to have you all here. This is Peter Mollins, and really excited to have Emily Kolvitz here, who heads up copy and content at Bynder. So, Emily, great to have you here.
Thanks, Peter. I'm excited to be here. And yeah, I'm Emily Kolvitz. I'm a ALA accredited librarian working in marketing. Sounds weird, but I promise it isn't. I manage the copy and content at Bynder, and it's the DAM used by brands like Spotify, Puma, and Five Guys.
Terrific. Well, great. So, DAMs is always such a fun term, very pun friendly. But maybe we could get a definition of what a DAM is, so that we can start the conversation off.
Yeah, great. Actually, it's funny. When I was thinking about this question, I was thinking about the DAM puns.
Yeah.
And DAM is kind of hard to define for a lot of companies, but basically it's just the art and practice of managing your digital media. So every brand has content, and that content is IP, and It needs to be protected.
Right. That's great. So maybe what would be an interesting way to kind of discuss the DAMs would be to kind of walk through like a content creation process. And I know, Bynder, I think around content creation, and so going from ideation through development and approval are sort of key things, and then distribution of that content are key elements. When you're thinking about that idea of like starting off content, how do you think about that? How do you think about coming up with the idea for what the heck we're going to produce in the first place?
Yeah, well, that's one of the great value props of having a DAM. Is it is a place to start for inspiration and ideation. So the brief can start in the DAM, yes, but also you can go look at the content your company has done in the past.
Mm-hmm.
You can look at the performance of it. You, like, for example, if you were planning an upcoming campaign on a specific topic, you'd go in your DAM, pull out everything your company's done based on that topic. Could be sales calls, pitch decks, market research. It could be final finished assets that are already on the website. And all those things you can take and say, okay, this worked really well. Let's make more of that. This flopped. Let's never do that again.
Right. Yeah. So when you're trying to decide about like what works and what doesn't, like what is that data that I'd be looking at? Like what should I be trying to see in order to see if something was indeed successful?
Right. That's a difficult question, I think, because there's so many KPIs you can look at for content. I mean, you can look in a variety of systems to get that too. It's really like, are you looking at, do I want to know, what's the question? Do I want to know how our audience is consuming the content? Do I want to know how our sales team is consuming the content? So starting with that question is where that would lead you to the place you go for the analytics. So in the DAM, you're going to have a lot of internal usage statistics. So things like, how much is sales leveraging the new deck that marketing made, versus like, I'm going to go to Google Analytics to see how the blog's performing. Or I would go to Salesforce to look at how a campaign is performing.
Right. Yeah, that's actually interesting, because initially when we were getting ready to start this discussion, I was thinking of assets mostly in terms of like customer facing materials and how customers would consume the information. But the point you brought up about internal metrics, that's interesting, because there's a lot of sales enablement material, I imagine, that's being produced, or at least some of the external content could be used as sales enablement. So maybe you can help me understand a bit more about that, about how DAMs can support like a sales enablement process.
Yeah, so that's just one of many use cases. And for I would say any brand that's looking for like tighter alignment between marketing and sales, which who isn't, everyone is trying to solve that problem. A DAM is a great place to increase that collaboration, because you're getting immediate feedback by way of usage. So you can ask, hey, what do you think of this new white paper? Is it helping in your sales conversations? Or you can go see, wow, this piece is really getting picked up by sales. They love it. They've been using it for the past 6 months. It's helping in conversations. It can really tighten that alignment between two teams.
I totally see it, because there's a lot of times where there's like a squeaky wheel principle in sales enablement, where it's just the the one account exec that is really keen on content, that asks for case studies and asks for collateral, and you end up producing materials to satisfy that person. But really, you should be looking at is your entire team using it, and how are they using it?
Yeah, yeah. So the data is one part, but I do think you mentioning reaching out and asking, especially those the people who are evangelists, who are asking and requesting the content and are heavy users of the DAM, heavy users of the content. Those conversations are very valuable too.
Right. And then, so then I imagine, is the DAM then allowing you to then centralize that feedback, so then you have that feedback in one place around content?
I think that probably takes more, takes place more offline, I would say.
Okay. Okay, great.
Just because the inputs are coming from so many different sources.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And now, as you sort of move from ideation into the actual production of it, I think then is there a role for the DAM in terms of like assembly of the content itself, so that you're pulling different pieces, like say the logo and the color or background or iconography? I imagine that's something we're struggling with right now, or we're working through right now at my company, is pulling in those various elements. So is that how does that fit into the world of a DAM, that type of consistency in assembly?
Yeah, great question. I think it's really interesting you bring that up, because you can think of your content as atoms. And maybe there's a phrase you've heard before, content atomization, where basically you have a library of content, which then you can take and assemble all the pieces, personalization elements to make new content. A DAM definitely facilitates that, keeps it organized, and it's beyond just the logo too. It can be, I mean, each brand sets a scope for their DAM repository, but it could be anything from, like I was saying earlier, those internal documents, customer stories that are finished, customer interviews that can't be published.
Right.
And all these different things, like you can remix and repurpose them into new content, and you should, because if especially if you're in a content creation role where you're spending significant budget on either commissioning content or paying freelancers to create content, whatever it is, you can get a pretty hefty ROI just on having an infrastructure in place that enables you to take these pieces and assemble new content. And then further, like people beyond my team, maybe a different team wants to create content for a different purpose. Why not democratize content creation to those people? If you can set rules like the brand guidelines in a way that they can still make content that looks like our creative director, LJ, made, I mean, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because just this very morning, actually, one of my colleagues had pinged in our marketing Slack channel and said, "Hey, I want to put up a banner in my LinkedIn profile that promotes hiring at our company."
Yep.
And so she went and she went to a design tool and pulled together the logo plus the background, and used the font, and it was like 90% of the way there. And it was but there was just like the color was off slightly, and some of the iconography was off slightly. But if she had, I mean, she did a great job. Like I was super impressed that she was able to home grow this, but you don't want it to be 90%, you want it to be 100% correct, right? And so exactly that ability to self-serve would have been fantastic for her. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's also a trend, we're seeing is just the democratization of tooling that's enabling people who aren't specialists to do whatever the specialists can do. Like coding applications that aren't built for coders, design applications that aren't built for designers. They're built for the people that they need some help.
That's right. Yeah. And like, I think one of the things that about marketing is that and designers is that we're not going to be subject matter experts on everything. And so the democratization of the design and production of content, it's so valuable, because then it allows them to make very specialized content. And marketing always gets a bad rap for having content that's too fluffy, too high level. But Yeah, if you give subject matter experts the tools, then they're gonna produce terrific materials, aren't they?
Yeah, I have a great quote we just got from a customer. She said our design team went from like 7 people to basically 600 just
That's
by adding some of these creative automation tools to their tech stack.
right.
Uh, and it's for the content that like the designer doesn't necessarily have time to make too. It's
Yeah,
like even job postings and stuff. I don't know how often you see on LinkedIn, sometimes when people they upload a job spec
right,
and promote that they're hiring and it says no information.
right.
There's no image. It's just, you know what I mean? It's just like
Yeah,
a
yeah,
little banner
yeah,
thing. Like things like that are ripe to make a template, to make a
yeah,
brand template into, you know?
yeah. Absolutely. So this kind of it brings up the question though, like if you have 600 people that are producing content, even with great standards and resources, some people are going to go awry. You know, it's gonna be a little tricky. So how does maybe let's first talk about the 600 process. Is there a process that a dam can do to help me control or approve, validate the content? Is that a core part of a dam?
Yes. And it has to be because there's always people that like to push things as
Yeah,
much as they can to see what they can do. I'm one of them. So since I do content and copy, like I still look to our design team, like, is this right? Is this on brand? Does it look good? And so just having in the dam that step of them ticking off it's approved makes
yeah,
me feel confident that when I go
right,
publish this on LinkedIn, no one's going to be like, Emily, like, come on, we've talked about this before.
right, right.
And it's it could be as simple as like education on like this is the template and this is the image and this is a better image to use. So really like the feedback that I get from the design is actually um, it's it's very quick, it's very insightful. I know what to do better next time I do it.
Yeah,
um, and I think since we use it internally on our own team, one of the things we were worried about is, is this going to be a big time suck for the designer to
mm,
approve every single thing?
mm,
And it hasn't been,
right.
which is something I'm really proud of.
Yeah. Well, especially if you contrast it with the amount of time the designer would have to put in to do the designing of each of those elements on its own, right? I mean, that would have been incredible.
Yeah.
So, well, related to sort of the approvals, I'm curious about what about like third parties? So, you know, there's a lot of like channel work that's done. There's a lot of, you know, you may have a partner that's a reseller, et cetera. Does that work in as well, like from an approval perspective? So having third parties coming in too, is that a part of a dam?
Yeah. So in the dam, you have there's a lot of configurations and digital asset management systems that allow you to put permissions
Mm,
around the different groups that come in. So like if you have a partnership team and like we have a use case for this actually for when we onboard new partners.
yeah,
We've got a nice little template that we make and we want to share that, hey, they're a Bynder partner. So they can come in and only see what we want them to see
right.
because they've been put in the partner user group.
Got it. Okay.
So every single asset gets a confidentiality
Mhm.
metadata field. So
Right.
it could say public, it could say internal only,
Yeah.
it could say partners, or it could say like highly confidential, like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
need to know basis. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So great. So now we've ideated on some content, we've produced some content, we've gotten approvals on it. So now it's time to get it out into the real world. Um, you know, there's a lot of different channels that content can go out. So if you have a data sheet, it might be surfaced up, I don't know, in an intranet or into like a sales enablement portal. It might be up on the website. It could be on a partner site. So how does why how does a dam help me there in terms of making sure that it's getting pushed out to the right channels?
Right. So through integrations, and depending on your use case, you can connect it to things like Hootsuite. So you can schedule social media posts. That doesn't work for a data sheet, obviously. But maybe it's like a new video you just made for
Right.
social. You want to schedule that. But for the data sheet, if you have an integration with your CMS,
Mhm.
you can push that to your CMS. And
Right.
then what's great is in the DAM, you've got a link to that where it's placed. So you understand all the places where that asset has been published.
Okay. Right. And does that help for like let's say you're updating some elements? Is there so I guess the traceability matters because then I can see where it's located. But if I'm updating something once, does that help me for for
That's the
many of
big,
those other sources? I get social. It's not gonna work for social, but for other channels, I assume that would work for that.
yeah, that's a huge thing is, once you update it in the DAM, it updates everywhere else.
Right.
That's huge because if you've got a bunch of integrations, like you really don't want to spend an employee's time
Hmm.
manually going to each system and updating it. And it happens sometimes. There's always stuff that could be more automatic that isn't, right?
Yeah.
Um, but the more you can make it automatic, so you update it in one place and it updates everywhere else, the
Right.
the happier people like me are. Um,
That's great. That's great. Yeah. Yeah. There's no doubt that is one of the biggest challenges when it comes to content. Is like you go out there and you find old logos everywhere, like on partner sites and on old landing pages that you produced ages ago. And so having the traceability so that you can go and pull that stuff back. I mean, that
it's
that is
it's good too, but it could even be important for like regulatory things, like for example, a product data sheet where something has to go live
mm,
immediately because something's like inaccurate or um, I know that's a big use case a lot of our customers have is
yeah.
um, data sheets populating on their website and it needs to be updated in real time.
Right. Any elements of like dynamism within the content that you think are important? Like, is there any other elements of like dynamically updating parts of a content piece?
Um, yeah, so one thing that I think is, I see what you mean. Yeah. Um, yes, in some places, for example, in some, so Bynder has a lot of content creation
Okay.
modules. We have
Yeah.
digital templates, video brand
Mm,
studio. Digital brand templates is more for like the
right.
static photos and things. And a lot of times, the ads that follow you around the internet that,
Sure. Yeah.
yeah, like those.
Yeah.
One thing we do is we have template sets.
Okay.
So if you update the copy and image on one, it does it to all the different various
Hmm.
sizes.
Hmm.
So that's one place where you would see that content being refreshed when you update the main asset first.
Right. Okay, great. So now if you're talking to, a VP marketing, a CMO, and talking about dams and why they should do it now, what would you tell them? Like, why should they prioritize looking at dams?
Yeah, great question. I think the big thing is just the last 16 months, we're all in this digital world. Everything is digital now. There really isn't a digital experience without content, if you
Mhm.
think about it.
Right. Right.
And also, there's this article from McKinsey that came out a bit ago called A Blueprint for Personalization at Scale.
Mm.
And it mentions the 4Ds, decisioning, data, distribution, and design.
Mhm.
And with design, it's the first time you see in one of these major publications, they mention digital asset management.
Mm.
And so finally, DAM, for so long, it's people, what is DAM? What do you do?
Right.
When I
Right.
introduce myself, it's hard to explain it. Suddenly in 2021, DAM has got a seat at the adults table. We've
Yeah.
elbowed our way there. People know
Yeah.
what it is. It's critical for digital experience.
Right.
If anyone's still updating things on a shared network drive, um, it's not future proof. There's too many things that can go wrong. There's this saying in the library space called, and maybe you've heard it too, lots of copies keep stuff safe. It's called
Yes.
locks. Yep.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so DAM in the cloud is actually where I think everyone should be looking at. If they don't have DAM in the cloud, that should be a priority.
That's great. Well, I guess last question for you, Emily, is how do you think your experience in library sciences, I think, connects to dams? I mean, what do you think? What gives you a unique perspective? Do you think, or what unique perspective does that bring?
Well, it's interesting because I feel like when I went to library schools, like I'm armed with all this knowledge. I can go to any corporation and just immediately convince everyone why information governance is so important.
Right?
And that's not the truth. You know, there's other priorities and there's
Yeah.
other ways of seeing things. So um, for me, I mentioned this earlier a bit about, content is a company's digital IP. They
Mhm.
should protect it. They should monetize it, manage it as
Yeah.
an asset
Yeah.
of enduring business value. Um, so that's really the main thing for me is like content is just so critical to business today in the online digital environment.
Hmm.
Um, screen fatigue and things. We're starting to get even annoyed at seeing stock photography.
Right.
Like having your own branded content library that looks and feels like your brand is another way you can stand out from your competitor,
Mm.
really.
Yeah, no, that's very true.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm not sure
Emily,
if I quite answered it.
yeah, no, it did. Yeah. Well, Emily, this has been great. I really enjoyed the chance to chat with you a bit more about dams and the content creation process and just how content continues to be such a key part of marketing mix. So I appreciate your time. Thank you. It's great to talk.
Thank you, Peter. I appreciate your time too.